Many of these stories about a lost civilization under the earth from indigenous cultures around the world have strong similarities. Is it possible that these giant creatures were the sages described in ancient Sumerian texts and others? And did these beings bring back humanity after a cataclysm?
In Sumerian tradition and in the surviving texts that have been passed down to us, there is a very strong and intriguing reference to what are called the 7 antediluvian sages. Go over to India, and we have the 7 rishis. So this number keeps on cropping up. We can go further away to Easter Island, and there we discover an ancient tradition that civilization was first brought to Easter Island by 7 initiated men. Now, how are we to take all of this, and how can we put it into some kind of context? For me, what I think we're looking at is more evidence that there was a high civilization that we have lost track of, that we truly are a species with amnesia, and that we have forgotten a very important part of our story. And fragments of that story crop up all around the world. What I think we're looking at is an outreach program reaching out to the hunter-gatherers in what we would call the Upper Paleolithic, and beginning to teach certain of them selected skills, giving them the gifts of civilization. But to find this theme again and again and again, the 7 sages, the 7 wise men, teaching the gifts of civilization, I would say we are looking at symbolic allusions towards the outreach of a lost civilization.
But who are these beings we have lost touch with?
If we look back throughout all the historical cycles, we find this interaction with supposed reptilian humanoids. That goes as far as even the mythic cycles of Europe, and the whole concept of, like, for instance, frog princesses and all these other strange things that we find coming down to us in lore about these people who aren't quite human, or they can pass as human sometimes, but they have a reptilian aspect. The stories about them and their interactions with people. It's often seen that, like for instance in the Mayan underworld, that even though these brothers kill some of these beings, the Mayan royalty traces their lineage to some of these same beings. And this is a theme we'll see, around the world, whether it's China, Japan, wherever it is, you have an elite group that believes that they are descended from these mostly unseen beings who live under the earth. The Anunnaki in the Sumerian text are described as being reptilian to some extent, or have bird-like heads, reptile-like heads. Even in contemporary accounts in ufology, people talk about the reptoids and these humanoid beings with reptilian heads. And this theme, again, is associated with the underworld and with these unseen manipulators of the human race. In the legends of Central Asia, there are stories about subterranean civilizations. One of these is called Agharta or Agharti. The other one is called Patala. And Patala is often associated with the Naga, who are reptilian humanoids.
As described in the Mahabharata, the Nagas are considered to be a subterranean, half-human, half-serpent race. At some point in the ancient text, they are important players in many of the events in the epic, and frequently even on the side of good, given the nature of their character. They dwell in the city Patala, which is said in the Vishnu Purana to have 7 realms, which are located one above the other. Patala is a paradise, and the Naga that live there are described as a very advanced race or species with a highly developed technology. According to the legend, they wage war on the kingdom of Agharta.
The Aghartans are supposedly enlightened human beings, and they have a ruler over them called the King of the World. He has a capital called Shambhala, which is in Agharta. And from this area, supposedly he influences events on the surface world. They also influence human civilization. They either interfere with our civilization to slow it down, or they give us little things to help advance it when it suits their purposes. We get the idea, we get the story that there's more than one group, and that they have various agenda that conflict with each other.
Are these underground beings really manipulating us? And if so, how? Graham Sear believes the underworld is a world that reaches out to us when we least expect it.
The entrances to the inner earth describe portals into the underworld, and the underworld is actually a plane between spirit and nature. It's the area of reality where spirit becomes nature and nature turns back into spirit. So it's an intermediary, sort of paradoxical, apparitional realm, which is closer to spirit than nature is, because it's where nature comes out of. It's where the spirits initially start to embody before they finally densify and kind of fall into this frequency range. You can look at it as the Christian purgatory or the Celtic otherworld or the Egyptian duat or the Kabbalistic Yetzirah. These are all different names that refer to this intermediary plane. That's also where prophetic imagination occurs and all these things. It's where revelation occurs.